So keep that in mind. If you get angry, you lose. And if they get angry, you lose. Well, shalom, everybody. This video is all about thinking on your feet. We've all been in situations, at least I have, where we wish we would have been able to maybe answer some questions on our feet a little better, respond to some challenges in a more effective way. And like we've all been in those situations. And I think particularly with people that we know, family members, friends, I find those to be the harder conversations because we care about those people. Not the me, we like to think we care about other people in the same way, at least I do. But the reality is I care a lot more about what people I know think than people I don't know. So sometimes it's actually easier to have conversations about really deep and meaningful things with strangers versus people we actually know. But to be able to think on our feet effectively and quickly, we actually have to understand exactly what one thing is. And that one thing is truth. We've all been in situations where someone has said something that we would like to respond to or that has conflicted with our personal beliefs. And sometimes I think this happens to me often where it's like, I know that I don't think that's right or I think that's wrong, but why? Right? And until we know why it's wrong, then we really don't know how to respond to it. So what this video is going to be about is I'm going to walk you through 6 truths about truth. All right. And once you understand what those 6 truths about truth are, then you're going to be able to apply those to everyday conversations, both in person and, on the proverbial web, internet, la land, universe of the internet. And I think it's going to really help you out. Not only are we going to walk through 6 truths about truth, but then I'm going to give you 3 questions that you can ask. They're going to enable you to direct any conversation the way you would like it to go in a productive way. I'm not talking about manipulation. I'm talking about productive, being able to guide a conversation into a productive avenue, arena, direction, whatever you want to call it. But I want to say right off the bat that in any of these conversations, whether they're online or in person, I really try to live by the rule of if you get angry, you lose the conversation. And if they get angry, you lose the conversation. And many times there are conversations that we should never begin because someone's already mad, or we should walk away from because someone gets angry. And once that happens, then there's really not much you can do to save a conversation. It's actually better just to say, hey, why don't we just talk about this at another time and place? So keep that in mind. If you get angry, you lose. And if they get angry, you lose. So when we get to the conversation aspect, I want you to try to think about that and keep that in mind. But right now, I want to talk about the 6 truths about truth. And this begins with the definition of truth. And a definition of truth that I hold to is something called correspondence theory. Correspondence theory is truth is that which corresponds to reality. That which corresponds to reality. Now, most people live their lives thinking about truth in this way, but then they kind of forget about it when it comes to things that we can't, that are outside the 5 senses. Things like morality, things like political or ethical beliefs, moral values and duties, the things you think people should or should not do, or hold as being good or evil, etc. So correspondence theory is really important to understand because many people live their lives this way, but then, like I said, all of a sudden throw this definition out the window as soon as it comes to a moral value or duty, a morality, an ethical thing. And it's truth is as simple as that which corresponds to reality. Right now, I'm doing this podcast. I'm wearing a gray shirt. My microphone is black. The little screen inside is red. I have a painting behind me. But does that actually correspond to reality? Well, let's look for a second. Is that a actual painting behind me? No, it's not a green screen either. It's a TV. And so it's not a real painting. It's just a TV that I can switch the picture out whenever I want to. I want to change the setting or scene or whatever, make it look a little different. Another thing about reality, is this a real flag of Israel? I am an Israeli. I live in Israel. Yes, that's a real flag in this room with me. What about these books up here? Are those real books? Yep, those are real books. Is this a real duck? No, it's a duck decoy. What about these books right here? Do those correspond as being real books in reality? No, those are fake books. I wanted some, old-timey looking books to have in my office. And turns out old-timey looking books are really expensive. So I just took my printer and I printed out some things that looked like old books. And then I took some blocks of wood and I glued them to the around the sides of them. So all those books right there are fake. So what corresponds to reality is that some of those books are real, some are fake. That's a real flag. This is a real sword. That's a real lamp. This is not Gandalf the White's original staff. That's one I 3D printed. Now, I think immediately you go, well, yeah, of course. I mean, obviously all that stuff is, that corresponds to reality. If you walked in my office, you could verify all those things evidentially. But again, where we get hung up is when it comes to things we should or shouldn't do. Morality, politics, laws of logic, how we think about things, philosophy. You can walk in my room right now, the office here, and you can determine whether all the things I've said are true or false, Is that a green screen or is it real tangible things? Again, I've said they're real tangible things, but you'd have to find that out for yourself. So all of those things I've just said are things that correspond to reality. That makes them true. Now, when we get a little deeper here, we're going to get into, let's go on to the 6 truths about truth. The first one is, all truth is discovered. All truth is discovered. Truth is discovered, not invented. It exists independent of anyone's knowledge of it. So let's stick to the room example here. Let's just say that you come to the conclusion that I'm lying, and then that's all a green screen. It's not even real behind me. Now, in order to prove that, you would have to come here and discover for yourself whether these are tangible objects behind me or whether it's a green screen. And you wouldn't know for sure until you came and discovered that for yourself. Likewise, we can think about things like gravity. When we think about gravity, Newton did not invent gravity, right? He discovered gravity. Gravity always existed. It's not like we were all floating around in space and then Newton came up with this idea about gravity and then we all got sucked down to the earth. No, of course not. He recognized there's something around us, something in time and space, in the universe, that attracts objects to larger objects, essentially. The funny thing is nobody still really knows what gravity is, but he at least put a name to it, right? Gravity. And so he recognized that something is holding us to the earth and we're not floating away, and he called it gravity. That was a discovery, okay? When Jonas Salk discovered that penicillin would kill bacteria that kills a lot of people and makes us sick, bacterial infections, that was something that always existed. There was always this thing in the environment around us that someone other than Jonas Salk could have figured out, made people well from bacterial infections, and they could have called it something other than penicillin. But the fact is that he discovered that this is what would work regarding certain infections. And so that is what this number 1 means. It means that all truth is discovered, okay? We don't invent it. Just because I come up with an idea that I think should be true doesn't make that thing true. Just because I want to be able to fly, I don't know if you guys remember a movie back in the 80s called The Boy That Could Fly. I think at the end of the movie, it's questionable whether he did fly or whether he committed suicide. Anyway, it's an interesting movie, kind of weird. But the point is that this is a boy that thought he could fly. And the reality is, if I go on my roof right now and jump off, regardless of how much I believe I can fly, I'm going to drop to the ground and get either seriously injured or go to meet my maker. So I would then discover that the reality is I can't fly, without an airplane around me and lots of fuel to get me going fast. Okay. So I think you get the idea here. All truth is discovered. Number 2, Truth is transcultural. If something is true, it's true for all people in all times, in all places. All right, let me slow that down. I'm going to say it again. If something is true, it is true for all people in all times, in all places. Truth is transcultural. Okay, now, regardless of what you believe about the moon landing, I'm just going to use it as an example real quick. So in the United States, or most of the, anybody with a TV or that's read a book in the past, however long it's been, since the 60s, since we went to the moon, they're aware that Neil Armstrong was the first man to walk on the moon. Now, if you're some guy in the Amazon jungle and you've never seen a TV, you've never read a book, you don't know about these things, you don't even know that there's airplanes that exist, is it still true that Neil Armstrong walked on the moon? Well, yeah, it is. Regardless of what that guy thinks about it, it's still true for him. It's true for all people, even if you're in the Amazon jungle, at all times and all places. That I don't remember what year it was. I didn't look this stuff dates before I did this, but I'm just going off the top of my head. But the point is that even for the guy in the Amazon jungle, it's still true that Neil Armstrong walked on the moon, because it's true. If something is true, if something corresponds to reality, it's true for all people in all times and all places. Truth is unchanging. So truth is unchanging even if our beliefs about something change. The earth has always been a sphere. And if we go back to, people back in the day, some people thought the earth might be flat, might sail and just fall off the edge of the square. And then, people proved that no, we're actually on a sphere. And then now recently in the last, decade or so, a lot of people have joined the flat earther movement, are now challenging that. Regardless of it, whether it's flat or whether it's a sphere, our belief about it, the reality of it, whether it's a sphere or whether it's flat, is unchanging. That never changes. Okay. Now, we can debate about whether Neil Armstrong really did walk on the moon. That's not what this show is about. But, it's a conversation that is being had right now and has been being had for quite some time now, actually, the last 20 years or so, seriously. But regardless of which side of that you're on, the reality is that he did or did not walk on the moon. It's one of those two. And one of those two is unchanging. That event, whether it did or did not take place, will never change. That is corresponding to reality. Let's look at a religious example. Whether or not Jesus of Nazareth rose from the dead is an event in history, which, if it occurred, is unchanging. It is unchanging, regardless of what we think about it. Okay. And also whether or not you were there to see it, whether or not you lived 100 years before that event or 500 or 2,000 years after that event, it's still true for all people in all times and all places if it's an event in history that corresponds to reality, if it's actually true. All right. So truth is unchanging, and our beliefs about it don't, even if our beliefs about something change. If you were a person that thought that Neil Armstrong walked on the moon and all of a sudden now you believe that he didn't walk on the moon, your belief about it doesn't change whether he did or not. All right. And some of these points kind of cross over each other a little bit, but I think it's important to see the nuance in some of them. All right. Number 4. Are we on number 4? Yeah. Truth is unchanging. Number 4, belief or sincerity of the belief. It doesn't matter. So beliefs cannot change a fact no matter how sincerely they are held. Everybody knows, and I'm a person, you're a person, that we all believe things very sincerely. And maybe we have evidence why we believe those things to be true with genuine sincerity. But our sincerity, our belief about it, doesn't change whether it's true or false. It doesn't make it true. So that means if you're an atheist, let's say, and you don't believe that God exists, you're agnostic, you think that we can't know perhaps that God exists, or you're a theist and you do believe that God exists, your sincerity of those beliefs do not make his existence true or false. Your sincerity on whether you think Neil Armstrong provably didn't walk on the moon has no effect on the actual reality if he did walk on the moon or not. I have lots of LDS friends, Mormons, people who are members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and I disagree with them on like 99.9% of everything they believe. And they probably do me too. They might just not realize it. And these are very sincere people, very loving people, very friendly people, but their sincerity does not make their belief true. And my sincerity about them thinking that what their belief is false doesn't make it false. What makes it true or false is whether or not Joseph Smith is a prophet of God, whether or not that corresponds to reality, whether or not there were golden plates that he found and copied down into the Book of Mormon, whether that whole narrative is true or false has nothing to do with the sincerity by which people hold that belief, and everything to do with the evidence that either proves or disproves it. It's the same thing with any belief, whether it's a political platform, whether it's how you see the JFK assassination, whether it's an argument you're having with your spouse, whatever it is, your sincerity does not and cannot affect whether something is true or false. And I think that should be really helpful in conversations, because oftentimes, sometimes this kind of gets into the next one, but sometimes we are persuaded by someone's sincerity of a fact instead of evidence for the fact itself. All right, let's keep rolling here. Number 5, attitude doesn't matter. This is a little different than sincerity, but it kind of overlaps a little bit. Truth is unaffected by the attitude of the one professing it. All right, let me read that again. Truth is unaffected, reality, the world around us is unaffected by the attitude of the one professing it. What does this mean? It means that jerks can tell the truth. Someone can bring you a message which is true, morally true, righteous, according to, let's say you believe in God, the creator of the Bible. But they can be a real jerk in how they tell it to you, and you don't want to listen to it, right? Now, likewise, someone can be really silk-tongued, tickle your ears, be really nice and friendly and loving, and they might be genuinely friendly and loving of you, but tell you lies. And their attitude does not determine whether or not what's coming out of their mouth is true or false. It might determine whether or not we want to listen to them, right? Because nobody wants to listen to a jerk. I know I can be a jerk sometimes. Unfortunately, I think we all can, right? And so this kind of gets back to, when we have conversations with people, that beginning point there, if I make them mad because I'm a jerk, I've lost the conversation, and vice versa. So we want to be, mindful of that. But also ultimately the point is that the attitude, we have to check ourselves and ask ourselves, am I not believing something that someone is saying because they're a jerk about it? Or am I believing something someone is saying because they're really nice and loving about it? Or am I believing something based upon the evidence that I can discover whether that thing is true or false? So that's a really helpful one, particularly when we get into how we kind of get duped by things or taken in by false beliefs. Number 6, all truths are absolute truths. All truth is absolute. What does that mean? There are no relative truths. And to deny absolute truth's existence is to actually confirm it. Meaning, if I say, no, there is no absolute truth, what have I just done? I've just made an absolute truth claim. And so whatever truth is, whatever corresponds to reality is absolute. It's absolutely true. It's not relative to you or me. Now, what's an example of this? One I've heard before is if you get pulled over by a cop and you're going 85 miles an hour in a 55, because kind of the classic line today is you have your truth, I have my truth. Let's just live and let live. Okay. Well, you can live and let live, but it doesn't mean that you can have your own truth about something and I can have my own truth about something in the same time, in the same sense. Meaning, I'll get back to the cop example in a minute, but there's something called the law of logic, which is the law of the excluded middle, which means if, let's just say person A over here says there is no God, and person B over here says there is no God. They can't tell you, person B says there is a God. They can't be both right at the same time in the same sense. Why? Because person A doesn't have their own truth and person B doesn't have their own truth. And whatever they believe about it, right, doesn't affect whether God exists or not. How sincere they are about that belief doesn't matter. Their belief about it, or maybe them changing their mind about it, doesn't make it true or false. It is what it is. It either corresponds to reality or it doesn't correspond to reality. And so I can't have my own truth and you can't have your own truth. There is only the truth. So when it comes to the cop example, you get pulled over. Again, you're going 85 and a 55, and the cop says, you know why I pulled you over? And you go, no, I don't know why. And he says, well, you were speeding. And you say, well, no, I wasn't. He said, well, yeah, you were. You were going 85 and a 55. And you say, that might be true for you, but it's not true for me. You have your truth, but I have my truth. And my truth is I was going 55 miles an hour. Well, that doesn't correspond to reality if you really were going 85 miles an hour. We aren't, privileged to have our own truth be made up about whatever we want it to be made up and be true anytime we want it to be true. That's not how reality works. And I hope you're getting the theme here is that reality, truth, is above all of us. Okay? And so, and all of that reality is absolute. It either is or it isn't true. Now, you might be thinking, well, there's lots of things that I believe or that I, cherish or feel or whatever that are only subject to me. Well, that's not relative, that's subjective. And so there is a difference between subjective and objective truth. Most people treat truth like it's ice cream. Most people treat absolute truth as if it's a preference. But absolute truth isn't a preference. But within absolute truth, we do have subjective and objective, okay? And I think this is where the clarification needs to happen regarding people who believe in relative truth. You have your truth, I have my truth. Well, that might be the case, but only when it's subjective to your personal preference, meaning my favorite ice cream, let's just say, is Bluebell ice cream, Rocky Road, okay? The reality is I like all ice cream. I don't really have a favorite, but let's just say it's Rocky Road ice cream. That's true. It's true for all people in all times and all places that my favorite ice cream is Rocky Road. And anybody on the planet can come and ask me and discover whether that's a true thing about me. So that's an absolute true thing that's subject to me. That's a true statement and it's not true for everybody, right? Because not everybody's favorite ice cream is Rocky Road. That's a subjective truth for me. But these are also not things that are right or wrong. It isn't right or wrong to have a favorite ice cream. Now, let's move into a different category. Let's just say I'm a serial killer and I see nothing wrong with killing people and eating them, right? Like Jeffrey Dahmer style. All right. I don't know why I went to this dark way, but the point is I want it to be really clear here. That is not a subjective truth to me that's okay. No, it is wrong for all people in all times, in all places, for serial killers to kill and eat people, right? Like everyone could recognize that. Sometimes we have to go to these extreme examples to kind of hammer the point home, but you get my drift, right? My personal preference of ice cream is not a moral value or duty. This is not something that's morally right or wrong. And it's fine for me to have that preference. It's fine for me to say, I like wearing blue jeans. That's my favorite kind of pant to wear. And that's true for all people in all times and all places that I like wearing blue jeans. Okay, fine. But when it comes to the other side, the objective truths, what are true for all people in all times and all places that everyone has to adhere to, that's when we get to the objective side of the truth equation. Preferences don't matter. It's murder is wrong no matter what, right? Difference between murder and killing here, I want to delineate. It's either right or it's wrong. It can't be both. God either exists or he doesn't exist. He can't be both, existence and non-existence. And something to realize here is that, I'm not sure I spelled relativizing there correctly, but all religions make exclusive claims about their faith. All religions do this. So a lot of people will point to, let's just say Christianity and say, well, I don't like Christianity because it's so exclusive. Well, all religions make exclusive claims. They're all claiming something to be absolutely true. Even if they're saying that all religions are true, that itself cannot be true because not all religions say that all religions can be true. So, for example, Christianity is going to say that all the other religions are not true, and some other religions, and so is Islam. But let's just say there are some factions within Judaism that would say that everyone can make their way to God, even if you're outside the religion of Judaism. Well, these are contradictory claims about reality. And the reality would be that there is one true nature of God. There is one true revelation of God to man. There is one true, or maybe he doesn't exist at all, okay? But the point is that whatever corresponds to reality is the true thread that runs through everything, all right? And whatever we put in front of our eyes to try to view that is our worldview. And so we want to get some glasses that are as clear as possible. These are just blue light glasses. There's no magnification at all. And so whatever we're trying to discover truth with, we want to make sure it's the clearest, most unobstructive view we possibly can. And when we start bringing things in like you have your truth, I have my truth, all truth is relative, every religion is actually true because they all teach similar things. These are just putting mud on your proverbial worldview glasses, and they're preventing you from understanding what is actually reality, what is true. And when it comes to reality, look, guys, I want to believe what's true because I want to live in a world that's real. I don't want to believe false things. If I believe false things, then I'm literally living my life and making decisions based upon things that are literally non-existent. They don't exist. And I'm going to make bad decisions if I live my life that way. Okay, so those are the 6 truths about truth. Let's get into, once you kind of work through these and come up with your own examples besides my examples of the ones I gave you regarding, I'm just going to run through these really quickly again. All truth is discovered, right? We're going to discover what is true. We don't invent truth. It's transcultural. If cultural, I have such a hard time saying that word. If something is true for all people, something is true, it's true for all people in all times and all places. Truth is unchanging. Truth is unchanging even if our beliefs about something change. So whether or not you believe the earth is flat, whether or not you believe God exists, the earth being a sphere has always been the reality. God existing has always been the reality, my point of view. And you would have to discover for yourself whether that's true or false. Belief, sincerity doesn't matter. We can be very sincerely, catch this, wrong. And I didn't cover this, but I want to say this. We need to be examining ourselves because we should be wanting to live in a world that's real, to see whether the beliefs that we are holding to, that we're making decisions by, even though we're sincerely holding those, we need to question, what is our sincerity based on? Is it based on because it makes me feel good to believe this, or is my sincerity and belief based upon the evidence which has driven me to this sincere belief? All right, very, very important. Attitude doesn't matter, right? Truth can come from jerks, and falsities can come from good-looking people. And all truth is absolute truth. And then within that, we have subjective and objective truth. And so some truths are going to be subjective to just you, and then some are for everyone, like morality. All right. So critical thinking on your feet. Now, now that you have these 6 truths about truth, you can start thinking about your belief systems and why you believe things. And this is also going to help you in critical thinking on your feet, because when we're on our feet, once we know the 6 truths about truth, when someone says something, we're going to be better equipped to immediately kind of think about that in a way. Okay, so they're saying something that I think evidentially is untrue. How do I deal with this now? Because I can see that they believe that, but they kind of just believe it because they are emotionally attached to it. Their sincerity and emotion is driving them to this belief, and not actually that the evidence that we see points to the earth being a sphere, right? Or that Neil Armstrong landed on the moon, or whatever it might be, that the discussion about God's existence, or Christianity versus the LDS faith, or Christianity versus whatever it is, Islam, whatever. You get my point. So critical thinking on your feet, I'm going to give you 3 questions that you can now accompany those 6 truths about truth. And these 3 questions are going to really help you have productive, good bi-directional conversations with people. Okay. That first question is, what do you mean by that? There's so many times in a conversation where we just talk past each other. I use a word that you don't understand, or you use a word that I don't understand, or maybe we think we understand that word, but we're talking past each other because we don't actually agree on what the word, the meaning of the word that we're both using. Let me give you an example. I brought up my LDS friends. I'm not here to beat you up, but I do want to, this is a helpful example. I've had lots of conversations with Mormons, Latter-day Saints, and I come to find out that when they use a term like God the Father, it doesn't at all mean the same definition as me as a Jew. I believe that his character and attributes are, okay? So in the Hebrew Bible, God is Abba Shabbat Shemayim. God in heaven, Father in heaven, is the creator of all things. He is an uncreated being. He is the uncaused first cause. But in the conversations with my LDS friends, they believe that God the Father used to be a man, and that in their faith, there's a famous couplet. I don't remember if it was Ken Follett or someone else, but that said, as man is now, God once was. So God used to be a man. And as God is now, man may become, meaning man can become a God. And there's lots of other things, this is not a video about that, but my point is that if I were never to ask them the question, when you say God the Father, what do you mean by that? Then we could have an hour-long conversation using the same term and never actually understand that we believe completely different things about what we're both saying, okay? Let's look at the political world for a second. What do you mean by that? Now, there's been, I'm staunchly a conservative, and I disagree 100% with the Antifa movement. And so, but they use the term fascist to describe everyone who doesn't agree with them. Now, I've actually tried to have conversations with Antifa members, okay? They've never gone anywhere. But if we were to have a rational conversation, and I've asked them this, but they won't answer it, when you say fascist, what do you mean by that? What is your definition of a fascist? Because you keep using that word. It's like in from The Princess Bride. You keep using that word. I don't think it means what you think it means. So they keep using this term fascist to describe all these people that aren't by definition fascists. So, what are you actually accusing us of being is the question, right? So that's a little harder. You can't have a conversation with someone who's not willing to have a conversation. That gets back to the whole, if they're mad, don't even start. But what do you mean by that is going to be so helpful for you in just clarifying terms so that you can have productive conversations. And you can use it over and over again in a conversation. And you don't always have to, say it in the same manner. You can kind of phrase it differently if you want. Finally, and then next is, how did you come to that conclusion? There's going to be a time, let's go back to the art, and let's say I'm having a rational, calm conversation with an Antifa member, okay? And they have called me a fascist because I'm just a white colonialist, all right, or whatever. And I'm like, okay, how did you come to the conclusion that I'm a fascist because I'm a white, like, how did you come to the conclusion that being a fascist is defined by being a white colonialist, right? Or for my LDS friends, how did you come to the conclusion that I can become a God, or that God used to be a man? All right, we can have that conversation. How did you come to that conclusion is a great question, because it's a friendly way of saying, prove it. It's a friendly way of asking for proof in what they're saying. So, but we don't want to say, well, you believe that, prove it. All right, we don't want to say that. But how did you come to that conclusion? Ask them to give you examples, and evidence is really what we're asking for why they believe what they believe about whatever it is you're asking the question about. So this is a very helpful question. Number 3, have you considered? So once we've clarified what we're talking about, which is, what do you mean by that? How did you come to that conclusion? And if we want to give our point of view, if we want to give them some evidence on perhaps what they should think differently about, we can ask the question, well, have you considered, right? So I'm an Israeli. When I'm talking to people that disagree with everything about Israel, and they call us white colonialists, you're just colonizers. One question I ask them is, well, have you considered that Jews are the only people on earth that have ever actually decolonized where they moved to. Now, we haven't colonized anything. We never like went around the world planting flags or anything like that. We have returned to our natural homeland and left countries that we had influence in, left countries that we bought land and had businesses in. Sometimes we were kicked out, sometimes we left voluntarily. But the question of, have you considered that we are the only people in human history to ever leave places we went to actually, quote, decolonize, it really makes people stop and think. Because I'm not saying you're wrong, this is what the truth is, blah, blah, blah. No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying, well, have you considered these points of reality? Have you considered that you can discover that this is true about the Jewish people? So those three questions, what do you mean by that? How did you come to that conclusion? And have you considered are so incredibly helpful in all of your conversations where you want to have productive, meaningful, respectful, loving conversations with other people who agree with you. Disagree with you. Oh, you can still use it with people who agree with you, but kind of try to sharpen your points a little bit, but who disagree with you. These are so incredibly helpful. So let's just real quick so you guys can see them again. What do you mean by that? All right. How did you come to that conclusion? And have you considered? And it doesn't mean that the conversation goes from A to B to C and that's it. No, you circle back on these because that conversation is going to evolve once you start understanding the terms that they're using and vice versa. It's going to evolve once you start getting evidence from them and vice versa. And the great thing about these also is that because they're questions, the onus or the burden of proof about whatever claim is being made is on the other person. You're getting them to clarify what they believe, why they believe it, and then you're having them consider new information. You really don't even have to state your position on things if you don't want to. And I think that's really important to understand, that to have good, productive conversations, you really want to understand the person. You have to understand where they're coming from, why they believe what they believe. And oftentimes people, as you probably know from yourselves, if you really ask yourself some honest questions, many times we don't believe actually why we believe what we believe. And if we ask ourselves these first two questions, particularly the second one, how did you come to that conclusion? If you ask yourself, how did you really come to the conclusion of the faith that you believe, the political standpoint that you adhere to, the business that you believe is going to be successful? Is it because you just want it to be? Because outside pressure is forcing you in that direction? Because this is what all your friends believe, or your parents believe, or your religious community believes? This is one of the hardest things in life. One of the hardest things in life is to strip out all of the influence, get away from all the influence that pressures you into believing certain things, to then believe something based solely on the evidence that corresponds to reality. That evidence that pushes you to discover what is true. Because only based upon that are you going to believe true things and then make quality decisions and and then also change the position of your heart on specific issues like morality to align with what is really true. And for all of those types of discussions, you can go to my other videos. So I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope this has been helpful for you. I'm David Halevi. This is The Rooted Kingdom. And if you like this type of stuff and you would rather your worldview be based upon truth instead of your feelings about what the world might be, I think you're in a good place. Love you guys. Thanks for showing up. See you in the next one.
Barefoot I walked Jerusalem square. Blood fell on my trousers as the horses did draw near. Then gripped by fear I quickened my gait, steadily aware that I do not control my fate. So I reach out, I hold tight. Whatever comes about me will be in my Maker's sight. My Maker's sight. From the beginning cursed to toil, I rise to work anew, but my tools have all turned to spoil. Then all my vineyards did run dry, employing a man named Lucifer, trading wisdom for a lie. So I reach out, I hold tight. Whatever comes about me will be in my Maker's sight. My Maker's sight. Words drip like honey from her lips. Every intimate emotion poured out from her fingertips. This siren's ring is calling loud, but I must deny myself, if only to make my Maker proud. So I reach out, I hold tight. Whatever comes about me will be in my Maker's sight. My Maker's sight.